Hello, and welcome to Ecumenical Advocacy Days. My name is Leslie Woods, and I am the conference director. I want to start by thanking each of you for participating today, for supporting EAD with your prayers and gifts, and whether or not you had planned to attend EAD in person this year. I mourn the loss of our in-person gathering and the opportunity to see you and to make connections. If this is your first time with us, Ecumenical Advocacy Days is an annual gathering of ecumenical Christians that meets around a different topic each year. Together, we worship God, study, network, educate, train, share fellowship, and in general build capacity for the ministry of making social change and doing advocacy. Our theme in 2020, Imagine, God's Earth and People Restored, lifts up the global crisis of environmental injustice, with special attention to the intersection of climate change and economic injustice. Today, this focus, chosen a year ago, seems almost prescient in light of the global pandemic we face. As we planned our in-person conference, we envisioned a gathering that would explore the intersections between the environment and the economy. And today, we add to that the resulting devastating impacts on public health. Today would have been our lobby day on Capitol Hill, and it still is. We are gathering together today as a Christian community to demand justice in our nation's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. It is my honor to welcome all of our guest speakers. I will begin by introducing the first two. First, we will hear from the Reverend Dr. Betty Whitted Holley, presiding elder with the African Methodist Episcopal Church, superintending 30 churches in the 3rd Episcopal District in Ohio. Dr. Holley is the Associate Professor of Ecological Theology at Payne Theological Seminary in Ohio, and also serves as the Director of the Master of Divinity program there. She is the African Methodist Episcopal Church Representative to the Board of Directors for Creation Justice Ministries. Next, we will hear from the Most Reverend Mark McDonald. After 10 years as the Episcopal Bishop of Alaska, Mark McDonald became the first national Indigenous Anglican bishop, a position that became an archbishop in the Canadian Anglican Church in 2019. He is also the North American president of the World Council of Churches. Welcome to you both.
Dear Lord, thank you for the opportunity to share this Bible study. Amen. Globally, we are facing a horrific moment in the age of the Anthropocene, the age of the human, with this coronavirus pandemic on the prowl, spreading the deadly COVID-19 disease, claiming lives even at this very moment. This pandemic comes on top of our ongoing eco-justice agenda, which seeks both human rights and the rights of nature. Our concern about the link between ecological health and economic justice, and our overall concern for the sustainability of planet Earth. How do we respond to this pandemic that is shining the light on environmental injustice? According to a new study from the Harvard School of Public Health, people who contract COVID-19 are more likely to die from the disease if they live in areas with high levels of air pollution than those who breathe cleaner air. The new research, which examines coronavirus cases across the United States, underscores the need to enforce existing air pollution regulations to protect human health. It also serves as a powerful additional condemnation to White House administration efforts to roll back life-protecting clean air regulations. Communities of color are disproportionately exposed to air pollution. Many communities of color, especially Black and Brown communities, are turning out to be highly vulnerable to the coronavirus pandemic, with disproportionate numbers of infections and deaths among African Americans in both rural and urban areas across the country. Exposure to pollution is one of the many factors that negatively impact public health among communities of color, resulting from decades of inequitable policy decisions. This underscores yet again why addressing ecological injustices is so important. So, in the midst of this crucial and frightening time, we must ask the question, what does God expect of us? The same question was asked by 8th century prophet Michael in the midst of injustice and violence in BCE to the Judean society in the scripture verse found in chapter 6 of Micah, verse 8, which reads, "What does the Lord require of you but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God?" This passage offers 3 commands to enable us to give a clear response. To do justice, command 1, means to be honest and impartial in our witnessing. It requires fair treatment, promotion of racial equity in the courts for all people, especially people who have limited resources to defend themselves. To love kindness, command 2, means that we must reach deep into our hearts to find attitudes that will manifest themselves in positive, merciful actions toward God and all of humankind. It involves putting our love into action. The first and second commands stood at the center of Israel's faith talks: love of neighbor and the love of God. How can we say in the here and now that we love God, whom we have never seen, and promote injustices toward our brother or sister that we see? We are our brothers and sisters' keeper. To walk humbly with our God, command 3, means that we allow God to be our constant companion and guide. We give up our arrogance of boastfulness in our walk. To walk humbly with our God is to give up all pretense to self-sufficiency and instead rely on God as our help and our shield. To walk humbly also invites us to the faith journey of self-giving, self-sacrificing, and self-emptying, allowing our walk to please Almighty God. Bottom line, our ultimate response to COVID-19, eco-justice issues, and racial equity must be to seize each and every opportunity to continue the work of advocacy for justice for all of humankind and other. Justice cannot be canceled during this coronavirus pandemic. So the question, what does God expect of us, leads us to the restoration of God's image in us and is an invitation to become change agents of transformation on planet Earth to all of God's creation. Thank you.
I'd like to give Easter time greetings to everybody. I'm Mark McDonald. I'm the National Indigenous Anglican Archbishop for the Canadian Anglican Church, and I'm also the North American President for the World Council of Churches. I would like to tell you the story of Odeiman. Odeiman is spelled O-D-E-I-M-A-N, and it is an Ojibwe word, or Anishinaabe word, that is the name of a great hero from a long time ago. Odeiman was a young man who lived in a time of a pandemic, a pandemic that threatened the life of his entire community, all of his family, all of his loved ones. It affected him too, and as a young man, he also was stricken by the plague. He made the journey from this world to the world to come, and when he got to the gate, he called out to God, Ecumenical, and asked him what needed to be done to stop this. And Ecumenical said it is very difficult, because what had happened is that the great law of life had been violated, bringing horrible consequences. The people had forgotten how to live in balance with the rest of creation, and they had lost the understanding of that relationship of reciprocity and sacrifice, which is at the heart of everything that is. He said it would be very difficult, but a person would have to go and articulate how the people must live, number one, and number two, they must embody that sacrificial love which is at the heart of creation. Odeman said, I am willing to do this, for I love my people so much, I love creation so much. And so he went back, and he not only articulated the life of reciprocity and sacrificial love that is at the heart of creation and all things. And then he embodied it as he suffered and went through that which every human being dreads to go through once. He went through it twice on behalf of his people. Now, the people were grief-stricken by this event, and God looked down and with compassion gave them something that would soothe their grief, but also remind them at the same time of what Odeman had done. And so he gave to them Odeman's heart. Actually, Odeman means heart, but it also means strawberry. And so once a year, the people are reminded of sacrificial love, and it's important to all of life. And at the same time, they are reminded that there is a sweetness that comes from this relationship of reciprocity and sacrificial love. And in doing this, they would understand that relationship which gives life and sustains life. I believe that this story has echoes in many other stories, and I'm hoping that you will make those connections. It reminds us of Gichi Manado's love for the world, loving the world and all that is in it so much that he gave so sacrificially of the divine life among us. I hope that you will see this and understand this. And as we try to live into Micah 6:8, as we try to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with our God, we have to understand that this is not just a moral obligation that we have to God and to humanity, but this is an obligation we have to all of life. For we understand, and we're beginning to understand more deeply, the moral connection we have with every other part of creation, the living reciprocity that we have with every part of creation, and the sacrificial love that sustains life, that we must live, that we must articulate, that we must embody, just as Odeman did, and as Odeman's heart reminds us every year. God bless you, and may you have a blessed spring, a blessed Easter time, you and all of your community and loved ones.
Thank you, Dr. Holley and Archbishop McDonald. Moving into the next section of our webinar, we will hear from Shantha Alonso, Executive Director of Creation Justice Ministries, which is formerly the National Council of Churches Eco-Justice Program. In her time as Director of CJM, Shantha has prioritized racial ethnic equity as a driving force for protecting, restoring, and more rightly sharing God's creation. She will review our congressional ask and go over action steps today. Ecumenical Advocacy Days is many things to many people. This is only my first year as the director, but I've been attending as staff or participant since 2006. So to me, it feels like a big family reunion of colleagues and friends. For many, it's an oasis in a desert of challenging advocacy work that makes people feel alone and isolated, especially if their congregations are not supportive. It's an opportunity to gather as denominations and as affinity groups with interests in particular topics. But most importantly, it is an opportunity to equip ourselves through prayer, education, and training for the call to public witness ministry and the challenges of working to bring about social change and peace with justice. So every Ecumenical Advocacy Days ends with a lobby day, and this one is no different. If we were together today, we would have bussed into Washington, D.C., gathered together as a community at the United Methodist Building on Capitol Hill, and set forth from there to attend hundreds of appointments with congressional offices. Of course, we can't do that today. Like many of us, most congressional staffers are working from home, but we will use online action tools to raise our voices.
As an ecumenical community of faith-rooted justice seekers, race, health, and wealth inequities have been of deep concern for a long time. Now, in the midst of devastating suffering and grief, inequity in our world has never been so visible to so many people. This virus is indiscriminate in its spread, but the ability to practice quarantine and physical distancing is a class privilege. Our new reality has also once again shown just how deadly not only the racial wealth gap is, but also systemic racism. People who are essential workers, who do not have paid sick leave, or who depend on mass transit are far more vulnerable to virus exposure. This virus is more deadly to people who lack access to healthcare. In some rural areas, there simply is not an easily accessible healthcare provider. For others, fear of being crushed by medical bills is a reason to avoid getting tested and to delay treatment. In one heartbreaking story shared by a nurse, a man's last words of concern for his family before going on a ventilator and dying were, "But who will pay for this?" Stresses associated with racism take their toll on the body, compromising the immune system. The virus has devastating effects on bodies that have already borne a lifetime of environmental injustices, such as food deserts, as well as air and water pollution. By current count in many U.S. states, the share of deaths among people of African descent was at least twice as high as their share of the total population. The Navajo Nation has 10 times more coronavirus cases than the state of Arizona. Yet, some states are not sharing data by race, and much of the racial data is incomplete. This data is going to inform policymakers' decisions, so it is important to collect and cite. To give you a glimpse of what I'm talking about, take a look at the Kaiser Family Foundation's presentation of available state data on racial disparities in COVID-19 infection and death rates. These maps show the difference in COVID-19 infections in Black on the left and white on the right populations. If the color is dark blue, the ratio of cases to the percent of general population is even. Light blue, moving toward light orange, signifies some disparity. Dark orange shows the infection rate is at least twice as high. Now, take a look at the two maps showing the disparity in death toll. States that lack any color do not have sufficient available data to report. Behind this data is the heartbreaking reality of systemic racism and stories of countless people in each of these communities who are doing their best to make it through this pandemic, and some of them are not making it. Healing our communities is intricately connected to healing God's creation. Virus hotspots such as Navajo Land, Detroit, or a community along the Mississippi River in Louisiana that has gained notoriety as Cancer Alley all have in common generations of industrial pollution, where the basic necessity of safe water is inaccessible for many, and it is difficult to access nutritious food. Internationally, in places where the climate emergency has already contributed to making basic necessities scarce, this pandemic will cause much suffering also. Right now, Congress is passing sweeping legislation to respond to the coronavirus pandemic. Until now, Congress has focused on short-term relief measures. While these measures have been far from perfect, they show that in spite of years of previous partisan gridlock, Congress is capable of taking emergency action, and its scale has been staggering.
The over $2 trillion stimulus package is more than twice as large as the stimulus passed in response to the 2008 recession. And yet, relief efforts have fallen short for many. Tribes have not been sufficiently consulted or properly included. Navajo Nation President Jonathan Nez said of the federal government's coronavirus response, "We feel that the United States government once again has ignored or even left out the first residents." We will very likely also begin to see longer-term legislative responses from Congress, including efforts to do our part in the international community and measures to address the racial wealth gap and environmental justice are ahead. The decisions Congress makes today will shape our world for generations to come, and it is paramount that we make these decisions responsibly in light of the interconnected social, economic, and ecological crises we face. For this reason, the Ecumenical Advocacy Days leadership team has crafted our 2020 advocacy ask for racial, economic, and environmental justice in any coronavirus relief package going forward. We have 3 short-term asks and 3 long-term asks. Short-term, we need urgent response, including direct assistance in the form of healthcare assistance, widely available COVID-19 testing, and treatment at no cost to the public, essential worker protections, unemployment assistance, and food and housing security. We also need water and energy security in the form of a moratorium on all utility shutoffs and clean water at home and around the world. And third, international debt relief and poverty-focused foreign assistance to boost developing countries' ability to respond to the pandemic as well as the climate crisis. Longer term, as we look toward recovery, we need to put people to work healing God's creation, strengthening our communities, and building the world we need. We can address the racial wealth gap by providing funding towards supporting communities of color's ability to counteract environmental racism and become more resilient to future disasters. We can clean up toxic legacy sites and reclaim mines that continue to poison our communities and undermine our health. And we need infrastructure, clean water, renewable energy, clean air, internet broadband, and public transit. Our action has never been more important at this pivotal time. Getting our country's COVID-19 recovery and aid efforts right means saving lives and healing God's creation for generations to come. As Christians, we are in the Easter season now, reflecting with gratitude on the saving action of Jesus in the world. And with that gratitude comes a divine invitation to join in that work of healing salvation, living out those values of reciprocity and self-giving love. In the midst of mass quarantine, business as usual has stopped, giving us all a chance to take stock of where we are as a nation and as a global community. Living with required physical distance, our interdependence is clearer than ever. We need each other. As Dr. Holley advised us, justice cannot be canceled during this pandemic. To take action, I invite you right now to go to the website listed on the screen. This is the link to our 2020 action. The link will take you to a website called the Action Network, and the web form will directly connect to the web forms of your members of Congress. Your message will go to your representative as well as your 2 U.S. senators. While you take action, we will offer a bit of time for meditation as well, with the hymn, "There is a Balm in Gilead," sung by the Adventist Vocal Ensemble. Let's take action together.
Amen.